Get the meeting going. We'll call the meeting to order, and I'll read the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beau Soleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Adoption of the agenda. Could I have a mover and seconder for adoption of the agenda, please? And Melanie, I have the motions. I actually got the front desk to print them off for me, so I have them here.
Okay,
So
wonderful.
Mover and seconder for the adoption of the agenda. Looks like it's going to be okay. I'll go with Cease Ryle because it's the first time he's here in person in a long time.
Thank you very much, sire.
Well, followed by Jackie. Seconded. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next item is declaration of conflict of interest. I probably isn't any given what's on the agenda, and no business arising from the minutes that I could see because we don't have any minutes. New business. So just to set the stage, everybody knows that the purpose of this meeting is to finally approve our 2024 budget, which goes to the county council in March 5th or 6th. I'm not sure, Jen, one of those days, 6th. And we've been asked to take a look at our budget by the county council and find a bit of savings. And so Jen and who is our partner here? Myself and
Jen, Adele.
Adele, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay,
Oh,
Adele,
and Jackie.
Jen, and Jack. We took a look at it. I was partially unavailable for the last meeting, so I'll let you guys take a shot at this with Andrea, who's done the bulk of the work to get ready for this. There's two items we're going to do on the agenda today. One has to do with the appointment of the deputy CEO and when and how that will happen. And secondly, will be the actual budget. Is that correct, Andrea?
That's absolutely correct.
Okay, so first off, we'll deal with the deputy CEO position, okay? And
All
I
right.
think all the appropriate materials went out with the agenda, so you should all have it available.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. Just to sort of set up the rationale for why this section is on our agenda before we get into the budget discussions, is that an idea that was brought up during our finance subcommittee meeting was to not fill the deputy CEO role. We were also joined by Gary Dyke, the CIO, for part of the meeting. So we had a discussion around that position, and I outlined a rationale for why we did need to have that position filled. And it was suggested during the meeting that I kind of put forward a rationale so that everyone is sort of briefed on the rationale for why that job is really important. So I have included in your board package a rationale document. I also, in addition to the finance subcommittee meeting, Jackie very generously offered some of her time where we came here to Dysart and we discussed the roles within the library and talked about the deputy CEO position. So definitely our conversation contributed to the document that you have before you as well. Just go through that document here.
Just before you go on, Andrea, so one of the obvious options with respect to our budget is to leave the deputy CEO position unfilled, and that was one of the thoughts of a number of county councillors. The reason we're moving forward with it this way is that we believe it's necessary, but more importantly, rather than just make the appointment right off the bat, Andrea has given some thought to spending some time doing a little bit of restructuring around that position. So That's why we're dealing with this right now. Normally, we would just say to Andrea, go and hire your deputy and get on with it. But because of the pushback a bit from the county, we've decided to take a look at it. And I think we've settled on the fact that we're going to look at how the position will work going forward with a little bit of restructuring. So having set the stage for that, way you go, Andrea. Sorry. Cease, go ahead.
Can I ask, is the position currently in the amended budget numbers?
Yes.
So at a point in time, if we choose to say we don't want it, then additional monies would come out. Otherwise, it's already covered.
Yes, it's covered in the budget, and should the board say we're not going to go ahead with it, period, that money would become surplus, and we could put it towards a surplus or whatever else we want. The thing to remember here, members of the board, and the elected officials on the board would know this. Perhaps the non-elected officials wouldn't know it. The county does not have the right to cut our budget in detail. They have the right to give us money, and they can give us whatever amount of money they want to give us from the county levy. It's our job to decide where and how we want to reduce our budget if we feel we have to. So technically, we could say today to the county council, we're leaving it the way it is. Do what you want. Wouldn't recommend that, because that doesn't give us the opportunity to deal with the budget the way we want to deal with it. But we could do that. Even after we do the work today, if we follow all the recommendations put forward by Andrea, the county still has the right to say, instead of you've asked us for $1.2 million, we're going to give you $1.1 million, and away you go and do your thing. That's the way the Library Act works. It's very similar to the police budget. If you work in a municipality where there's a police force, the council doesn't have the right to cut the police department. In specific areas, it has the right to give it less money than it asks for. And that's because both the library and the police have special acts that have been in place for many years and allow them to do the kind of things that we're doing today. So I'll just set the stage for that. Cease in the background. That's what's going on if you want. Okay.
Because the only reason I'm asking, Dave, is a lot of times the both kind of tie it towards the final decision.
Yeah,
if we were able to make significant change reductions or acceptable reductions, leaving it in, then it also makes it a little easier to accept the fact financially that the position is coverable, if you know what I mean.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry, Andre. Now you can start after we've all had our 2 cents in.
So I have sort of outlined in several different sections the rationale for why the public services manager and deputy CEO role are absolutely essential. Some of the internal impacts, there would be no direct supervisor for 15 employees. That means no performance management, no coaching, no direct person to deal with interpersonal conflicts, no one to deal with when things escalate between a patron with a particular staff member, no one to address that, no one to address coordinated staff training, no manager doing timesheet tracking. This is a fairly straightforward thing to do for full-time staff. But because we have branch staff who work part-time and on-call, it is a duty that does take time to make sure that all the time tracking is done properly. There would be no coordinator for hiring competitions for branch staff. No one to make operational decisions when I am unavailable or sick or on vacation. Currently, I've been on call with no break since mid-October. There would be no manager to support me in doing research, report writing, putting together policy recommendations to bring to the policy committee. No one to coordinate system-wide changes. So, for example, a big project that this role coordinated is the standard schedule project that we implemented last year. There would be, when a big change comes up like a closure for carpet replacement, or a ceiling starts leaking, no one to coordinate all the logistics around kind of those practical matters. And there would be no point person to solve and communicate around health and safety issues that arise in 8 library locations. So that's the kind of some of the internal, these are just the highlights. Some impacts in the community. So participation in external committees would be impacted either directly because there would be no one to actually represent the library at those committees, or because the other staff who normally attend would not have capacity to take them on. So example, Bookapalooza, Haliburton Newspaper Digitization Committee, the Haliburton County Service Providers Network, Connections Committee. In addition, for kind of internal county and municipal impact, so there'd be, I already mentioned the planned or unplanned operational projects. So, no, the deputy CEO is the management representative on the Joint Health and Safety Committee, so there'd be no one to attend that. There would be reduced participation on municipal services committees. There would be reduced capacity for our team members to work on other cross-departmental committees. So Melanie and Aaron, for example, are really working hard on the records management implementation team. So it would impact not only just our department, but other work teams as well. In terms of service impacts, we would not be able to meet some of our strategic objectives. So in particular, establishing consistency across our branches and exceeding patron expectations. And as well, the strategic goal around developing staff and strengthening the library team would not be able to be met. So if the deputy CEO position is not filled, we will need to reduce our services. We can't have branch staff operating with no supervisor. In the past, we had branch supervisors in every location. We've been phasing out those positions as people have retired. So this role does supervise all branch staff members. We can have 15 staff members working without guidance and feedback from a manager. So the quality of services would deteriorate. We wouldn't be at the table for those community conversations, the examples that I gave previously. There would not be capacity to pursue other types of funding arrangements, grants, and fundraising, that type of thing. And I would lack data for making operational decisions, assessments, and that would render us unable to meet community needs. Based on several time periods in the last number of years where there has only been one person in a management role rather than 2, I can say that it has not worked at all. And obviously you can't go into the human resources details of that in a public setting, but it was not effective. It was not sustainable. It was not good for the health, the physical health, or the mental health and well-being of staff. And as someone who has been doing both roles since October, I've tried to make it look like everything is being done, but I just cannot continue to do this all alone indefinitely. It's worn out several people in the past, and I don't want that to happen. So that hopefully is kind of outlining a rationale for why this position is essential. So now what David mentioned in his intro is that one of the things we did talk about is looking at the sort of the team, the library team, and where there might be other efficiency. So where, looking at the budget may kind of look easy just to cut the deputy CEO position. But if we look at it big picture, that's not where things can be made more efficient. I think we can look at it systematically and see if there are ways to find efficiencies. So we have the deputy CEO position is vacant right now. In previous meetings, we've discussed the fact that the collections development coordinator position will become vacant at the end of May. Now, that is also a very core position to the library. There are internal candidates interested in these positions. So if at the end of May, we have some open positions and potentially open positions because of internal staff movement, that makes a time where if we're going to tweak internal workflow, we have the ability to do that. We can't wait. I can't wait to fill the deputy CEO role. I have included in your board package today the HR 11 county policy. And the reason I did that is you'll notice on the last page towards the end, there is a section on temporary assignments. So rather than cut the deputy CEO role, what I would like to proceed with doing is have an internal employee work in the deputy CEO role until approximately June. And have that time to do a systematic assessment of the positions at the library and look at if and how we could make tweaks to the job descriptions, the work tasks between who, between the different jobs as they exist right now. As I mentioned, because we'll have 2 vacancies and potentially internal movement into those essential roles, we will have the opportunity at that time if we want to say tweak the number of hours that one of the role does, or shift to having people work on Saturdays, or taking part of a portfolio and moving it over. Like, I think there are ways that we could make things work more efficiently, but time is required to do that, and I cannot continue to work 2 full-time jobs. I need to have a deputy to take on work. I can't continue like this. So the HR policy is for information. So I can operationally have an employee do an acting assignment. As I said at the beginning, the reason why we're talking about this at all is because it has been pitched as an idea of a way to do cost savings for the library. So we need this position. We need this position. And so this, I think, having someone do it will also be a development opportunity for that staff member, which is something we want to do here in Haliburton. We know that hiring people externally and having them move here is very challenging. This benefits me in terms of having someone to help show the management work. It is good for the employee in terms of having a great career development opportunity. And it enables me to have the time and the bandwidth to look at the kind of the workings of who's doing what in which role and how we might want to make some changes to that.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. I'm going to just now ask the members of the board if they have any questions. I have a motion ready to go. And I'll read it for you just to set the stage for the discussion that may be upcoming, and then I'll get a mover and secondary afterwards. It says, be it resolved that the Haliburton County Public Library Board requests that the CEO undertake a library staffing model review, and that a report and recommendations shall be presented to the library board on the June 12th 2024 meeting. So that's the motion that will come eventually before the board, unless you want to amend it. Before we introduce the motion, I'll just open it up to the floor for questions, and just raise your hand or put your little hand up in the screen, whatever whenever you want to speak. First one up is Jen.
Thanks a lot, Andrea, for that detailed overview. That's very helpful for us and for me going into the special meeting at County Council on the 6th. So great stuff. You referred to, and you'll have to I'll have to apologize because I had a cat yowling in my ear just as you were saying this. A temporary deputy until June. Is that what I heard? And if yes, how do you foresee that working, the temporariness of it?
So my goal is to do an assessment and present it to the board in June 12th, as you heard in the motion. And so I would have the current employee temporarily do the duties of the deputy CEO.
Okay.
I also need to have someone else temporarily take on the duties of that person.
Okay.
So it in fact be a development opportunity, not only for the person acting in the deputy role, but also another staff member. It would be temporary in that it would, be aligned to sort of end around when the collections coordinator person is retiring. So there would be a posting there that we're anticipating, and that we've discussed it in the budget for the job posting and the consultant fee. So it's sort of trying to align everything around that end of May, early June timeline, giving staff career development opportunities, giving me time to do this work, to make a decision, and then fill the positions as they look based on the recommendations.
Go ahead, Jen. Go ahead.
Okay. That's great. So it would be from inside, and then someone else would fill the role temporarily of the person who is temporarily being the deputy. Now, I have to ask, because it would come up at council, could this not be a permanent solution? Like, something has got to fall off the edge of the table for a while if we're trying to restructure from the inside. So what is the argument for not just making this the new solution?
It's a tricky question to answer without giving away HR information. That person whose role would be also temporarily vacant is also essential.
Okay.
So we would still need someone to do that work.
I think, Jen, if I can put it in perspective, the objective here is to keep the deputy CEO position.
Yes.
Ultimately, but in the interim, give Andrea enough, and you know this already, but I'll just say it for the rest of the people who haven't been involved, to give Andrea enough time to kind of look at how she would restructure to allow that position to actually be continued going forward. So there's a kind of a quid pro quo here. We want the position, but here's what we're willing to do to allow it to happen. And that's kind of where that's kind of the wedge in the pie is going to be coming from in that context. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I do get that, and I appreciate that you were saying that for the rest of the room as well. It's not the rationale behind it, which I don't understand, because I completely understand the rationale. I guess it's just, I'm only wondering, and this is getting into operational weeds that are not my role, but as I think towards my defense of this at council, they will likely ask me, oh, well, if you can make that work for a few months, why can't we just make, presuming everyone applies for, desires, and receives that change, why is that even possible for a few months if it isn't possible in the long term? I'm just trying to fill my my armament with some weaponry here.
Good point, and I appreciate very much your point position on this at council. You will be the one that will be asked those kinds of questions. Just before we answer that, Jackie has her hand up, and Paul had his hand up a long time ago. So we're going to start with him, Jackie, and then go to you. Okay. And then we'll swing back and deal with that particular issue, Jen, in case the others want to add something to it themselves. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you. The first point, basically to respond to Jennifer's question, the answer to that, I think very simply, is it's an opportunity to review, reflect, and evaluate. So that's I think a very simple answer to council if they buy that. For me, I just want to make a general statement about our situation right now. To me, it's clear that the current status the status quo is untenable. Like, we just possibly couldn't carry on like this. I don't think it's humanly possible for Andrea to continue like this, and it's not sustainable in the future. So having this temporary acting position, it's a good developmental opportunity. It's also an opportunity for the CEO to lead and also reflect on what's happening, and if necessary, to provide an opportunity for perhaps a review of that classification, the same way the collections coordinator is going to be reviewed, just to make sure it's current. So that, in a nutshell, I think you want to go ahead with this. We want to go support this initiative, and hopefully that council agrees and doesn't look for receiving or taking all of the funding on the vacancy if there was a vacancy there. That's it for me.
Thanks, Paul. I'll turn it over to Jackie now, please.
Yeah, I think all this makes sense. However, it does raise the question of does that not leave a vacancy in the administrative staff? So if you're moving people up and around to in an acting capacity, then there is still a chunk of work that is not going to be getting done. So how do we explain that to council?
It would be a development opportunity for someone who's not currently on the administrative team.
Okay.
And that's also something we want to facilitate, because all of our branch staff are part-time on-call employees in this organization. The only chance you have at getting a full-time role is on the administrative team. And so it would be an opportunity for a current staff member who typically works in branches to have a chance to work in the office.
Okay, that sounds great. But then it still raises the question of, well, then don't you have a vacancy in your operational staff?
So for our frontline branch staff, they are part-time and on call, and we do currently have capacity within that team, people who are interested in working more hours.
Okay. That sounds great. Yeah, to sort of be able to sum that up in a few sentences would for Jen to
So
and that's the answer. That's the answer that I was seeking too. I think Jackie just worded the question a lot more concisely than I did. Yeah.
Thank you. Just Jen, we're going to finish off with you ultimately on this, because you raised a very, very good question, and I have a great deal of respect for the role you have to play on our behalf at County Council. I really do appreciate that. Cease has his hand up. Let's him have a kick at the can, and then we'll come back to you.
So I think I'm getting to understand the way this is going to work. There are no more physical bodies going to be added to staff. Case closed. We're going to be adding more labor hours because of the fact that we're having to cover this stuff off with bodies that we already have. We're not, if not, now you're performing a miracle.
No.
Because if you're going to add more hours, it explains why how we can do this, because we're taking part-time people who have the ability to have additional hours. We're giving them more hours. They're not working free, so they're going to have to get compensated in some way, shape, or form. And at the end of the day, we're accomplishing the best that we can with what we've got. But if we're saying we don't have to add any hours, we don't have to add anything, and we can continue doing it by shuffling around, then Jen's argument becomes very real. If we can do this on a part-time basis, why can't we do it on a full-time basis? But if we need more hours from the existing people we already have, and we have that capacity because a lot of them, or some of them, are working part-time and can have that added, then the argument becomes very real. We're not eliminating the total cost. What we're doing is we're bringing a throttle on it until we can get a better handle of what we're doing, at which point in time, then we're going to be able to modify in June based on what you're coming up with. That's a logical argument. But to turn around and say we don't need anybody at any given point in time between now and June kind of takes the wind out of the sails in my mind.
Thanks, Cease. Jen, back to you to ask you very straightforward. Are you comfortable with this kind of discussion or this rationale?
Well, I am. I guess I'd like to put it back to Cease a bit because we're a team here.
Yeah.
And I want to hear more about the wind out of the sails because I think we have a different, and I'm sorry to everybody that we're now thinking collectively further ahead to what we're going to say on the day. Just forgive us for that. But I just want to make sure that Cease and I are clear. Cease, I don't see it as being wind taken out of the sails because, as you said, the overall ask is not changing. We're not saving any money here. We are buying time. We are buying the potential to create a really, really good solution, restructuring in a way that can't, for now at least, be permanent because no one has been offered a full-time jump in the structure. No one from branch is necessarily asked to become a full-time employee. Like, these are all temporary solutions and ultimately will cost us the same amount of money for a while. So I don't see it as being wind being taken out of the sails of the argument. The way I see it is an extremely well thought through response to a concern that will come up with a thing at the end. And at the end, who knows, what that's going to be. Council might really love it. They might not really love it. It might save us some money. It may not save us all that much money, but it is the most professional way to go about deciding where permanent cuts can be, rather than a quick back of the envelope slash within 10 minutes of a new CEO coming on board. So for me, that argument is really, really sound. And if there's wind coming out of the sails, then I apologize, but I haven't understood that. So maybe could you circle back, Cease?
And that's exactly what I was going to say. First off, I absolutely and totally agree with what you're saying. My argument is not with the subject. My argument is stating, if I was now sitting on the other side, I'm now a counselor. I'm not a member of the board anymore. I'm now sitting on council and you're asking me to do stuff. And at the end of the day, the argument for why we're doing it is valid. And I totally agree that this is what we should be doing. But as soon as someone comes up and says to me, okay, what are we going to need to do in the 6-month interim period while we're doing that? And there's no additional costs going to be appropriated, which it sounds like if we're not adding labor, there's not a lot of cost to be added. Now, is there going to be a sacrifice in service? That's another valid. That's the equivalent of cost because you're not delivering a service because now you're developing these other issues. And we can only do that for a temporary period of time until eventually it's going to back up and bite us in the butt. But so there has to be a rationale to argue why can we not do this on a full-time basis 24/7?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm kind of getting ready is for that argument coming back is that it can't be done because of basically the stress that's going to be put on our people. I don't know. There's got to be a logical explanation because if we just turn around and say that we're going to shuffle people now and at the end of the day, then we're going to add another person in June, that argument is not going to go well with at least 2 counselors that I know of. Mm-hmm. And you can probably think of who they are as well.
Jen?
Yeah, I guess to that, I would say, though, that because county council is even one step further removed than we are operationally, because even right now as board members, we're getting down into some weeds here that, aren't entirely ours to get into, but county council is one step well removed for that. And if at the end of the day, what they know is we've got a good practical solution coming up, but there will be no change to the bottom line of the budget, then I don't think they're going to, care is the wrong word, but they will not be concerned professionally with, oh, but does that affect branch hours or whatever else? What they want to know about is what we're doing to the budget. And right now, apart from what is about to be proposed in the next section of the meeting, there is no further reduction in the budget with these shifts. So they're not going to be looking down into whether someone who's a branch staff is able to continue to do that for, it's too far removed from them. They won't be hoping for,
Jen, I agree with you. I mean, I been there, done that, if I can say that in my life, so I understand completely where you're coming from. I think a combination of the fact that we're willing to look at this position and see what we can do with it relative to going forward. It may not be the same deputy position that Andrea occupied when she was the deputy. It may be a little bit of an amended position with some things changed a little bit. And in addition to that, the $44,000 or $5,000, I think, is the reduction in the next item on the agenda. Those combined should tell county council that we're really willing to give this a try, and that's the selling feature. I know there are 2 or 3 in my, maybe 3 in my head that will maybe say, okay, you tried, good for you, or may say, forget it, you didn't do anything to help us out with this particular situation. And that's a reality we have to live with in this kind of a structure. But I'm glad you raised it, Jen, and I'm glad you put it on a table, because that is exactly what is likely to happen when the time comes at county council. But I think we can go forward with some pretty significant rationale for it now, which we didn't have when we started this meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
really a great amount, like the work that's been done. And Jackie, I know you've been helping here with your experience too. This is very helpful, and I'm really impressed with what you've put forward. So thank you for that.
Paul, I think you had your hand up for one last shot. Go ahead.
I did. There is some marginal saving because the position hasn't been filled for a while. And if somebody comes in on a developmental opportunity, I don't expect that they would be paid at the top full salary. So there is a marginal saving there that goes in back to budget. The other thing is it saves, I don't know what the right word is, but organizational burden, where you're not faced with a number of competitions and interviews and so on at this time. So that gives Andrea a bit of a breathing space again to lead, reflect, to enable perhaps a bit more of a circumspect review of that CEO, deputy CEO position. And I'm hazard to throw this out, but I know in the Ontario provincial government for management type positions, there was a provision, I believe under Public Service Act, that somebody could be waived into position. So there wasn't necessarily a competition. And the rationale would be that the person that has been acting temporarily is capable, able to perform the functions that they're performing, and so they would be waived into position. I'm just curious if such a thing exists in the county structure or not. So I'll just leave that. I hope that lends a bit of insight on what you can take to county council as well.
Okay, so Jen,
if I may, it really does, Paul, and I can certainly make reference to those things operationally. Unfortunately, when it comes to the bottom line of the budget, county council wouldn't see the marginal savings, because we still need to budget the full-time position. So it's not like we could because it's a levied amount, and we don't want to take out positions from the tax levy. We want to keep them in. It's one of the lessons that I've found so frustrating in the last few years. But certainly I can refer to the operational savings of that. Yeah, 100%.
You're absolutely right, Jackie. You don't want to pull a position out of the levy, because you'll never get it back in.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The pre-COVID situation, we had a certain level of operation. And you can always argue whether you're efficient or whether you're not, but nevertheless, it was pre-COVID and that's the way it worked. During COVID, the demand significantly reduced and we said, wow, look at all the money we're going to save. And we took money out of our budget because we weren't doing those facilities in that 2 to 3 year period. Well, guess what? We're post-COVID now. That stuff is all coming back on board. It's all being required. It's all being necessary. And because we made a couple of less than intelligent decisions in 2 budgets ago, now we have to bring back some of the costs that should have been there anyway, but were never put into the budget because we didn't need them at that time. So now there are increases in the budget. And I want to make darn sure, and just so that you understand, I'm playing devil's advocate when I'm arguing that point. It's not that I totally, we need it. We just got to have it. But we're going to get some arguments, and Jen, sounds like you've got us ready for that. I just don't want to take out anything that we're going to end up biting ourselves in the butt later because we just got so short. Okay, I don't want to let you guys know I'm not interested in taking this position out. I'm merely arguing a couple of people that I know are going to argue this thing and that are going to be asking the question that I just asked.
Yeah. The other thing, Jen, and I know I had to leave the meeting early, unfortunately, last time. Did Gary approach this? Did Gary understand our approach to this when he was there? Because he will have a significant insight on this.
He did, yes. But to your point, Dave, from before, when members of county council suggest cutting a budget from a department or from a library, they can't talk about you should take away this role.
That's right.
They can only take away an amount.
Right.
So Gary could certainly, I don't know what Gary will feel comfortable saying as a non-elected member sitting at that table on, he might not get his toes into this pond at all because he's not a decision maker. But he did fully understand what was being said. He understood the rationale behind that. But if county council choose to remove the budget, it won't be because our argument wasn't sound on the deputy CEO. It'll be because they want to remove that amount from the budget, and they'll just say, great story about the deputy. By all means, wonderful solution. You're going to have to find that money from elsewhere.
Yeah, I understand. Thanks, Jen. That makes it a little clearer. I'll tell the point that Cease raised about taking, not leaving things in budgets in good times and taking them out to save money is an interesting one. I remember when I used to be the CAO of Mississauga for 8 years in a row, and this is a municipality that had $1 billion operating budget. For 8 years in a row, we didn't raise taxes at all because we had too much money. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous, but it was factual in those days. We had huge amount of development charges, and I was the CEO, and I had a big argument with council and the mayor. And it's hard to take on Hazel McCallion in public, but I said, you're making a big mistake. Take inflation, at least, and stick it in the budget and leave it there because you're going to need it when the time comes. When I left there, we had $1 billion in reserves. Now there are no reserves left because of that decision. That decision only. If they had not froze taxes and kept taking inflation, we never would have had that issue. And they do now. And this is the exact same argument that Cease was having. So you put all that together, and now you look at the constraints of a fast-growing, booming county council, where our population is going to increase dramatically over the years to come. And with population increase comes a whole bunch of expectations with respect to service delivery. And at the same time, expectations, well, we don't want to raise taxes. So I understand completely the quandary the county council is in and the members of our board who are on county council. It's very obvious what's happening in this county right now. And it's got nothing to do with the individuals on our board. It has to do with the nature of municipalities and how they grow and evolve over years and years and years. And for years, we didn't grow and evolve. And now we're at that point, we are beginning to evolve and we're beginning to change dramatically. And that is not going to stop. So I appreciate, Jen, very much your point of view and your concerns. And I appreciate the fact that you and Cease are going to be able to lead the charge on this thing as we go forward. Appreciate it very much. Good discussion. Jackie, shoot.
One final comment. We did indeed examine the budget in great detail, and we chopped out some $44,000. So it's not nothing. It's not going back and saying, well, no, this is what we want, period. We did go through that process.
Yeah, and that's a very strong point. Jen?
It is a strong point, and I will be sure to, or cease, we will be sure to make that point if and when necessary, especially because county council should know that if there is a vote to take a dramatically larger amount of money out of the budget that we've requested, including this $43,000 reduction, that will likely mean a dramatic decrease of services, because
Absolutely.
we've taken from everywhere else.
Yeah.
So the only thing left is a remarkable decrease in services, and that's, they should know that before we make that decision as county council. For sure.
Well, very well put, Jen. That's exactly what's going to happen. And we're going to be in the whole argument that's been hanging around this library for decades is, do we have too many branches? Where do we cut the branches? Where do we cut hours? All that kind of stuff. It's going to come up. So, Jackie, good. We have it in here, and it's pretty obvious that we have made significant progress on trying to make some reductions. But as Jackie and C say, we're at the control of county council, and there's not much we can do other than put forward what we think is the appropriate way to approach this issue and hope for the best. So I have a motion. I'll read it again. Be it resolved that the Haliburton County Public Library Board requests. Oh, sorry.
Big argument that we were getting.
I didn't see you. Sorry.
Back to the reason why I think the way Jennifer is going to handle it, or we're both going to handle it, especially if I go from the one side and she goes from the other, is that the main argument that we got from county council was that 10.1% or whatever the number was too high. It wasn't getting into the weeds. It was merely indicating that the number itself was too high, and that there should be a concerted effort to reduce that amount. Okay, at that point in time, there was no discussion as to exactly where. They understood that the where was this board. The number was what they were looking for. So if the number shows, and we'll know that very shortly, because I'm about to shut up and then we'll be able to move forward. But once we get that number, we can see how close to that target did we get. Because I think they were trying to get it down to 7.8 or something like that, which would have been kind of difficult to do. But having said that, I'd like to hear the rest of the budget now and see where we wound up.
Thanks, Ethan. I think when you see the budget and we do the quick calculation in our head, if Andrea hasn't already done it, our percentage increase that we're asking for with the cuts is going to be very close to that 7%, if not lower. Okay, we have a motion. Be it resolved that the Haliburton County Public Library Board requests that the CEO undertake a library staffing model review, and that a report and recommendations shall be presented to the library board at the June 12th, 2024 meeting. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Cease has his hand up, and Jackie. Okay. Just let me write it in here. If I don't do this, Melanie gets mad at me for not writing the names down. Anybody opposed? All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, Andrea, the next item is the budget and reductions.
All right. And now for those of you
Andrea, I don't think you have to go through it in great detail, line by line, because we've got it, but kind of sum up where you think the highlights are, the big ones, and then what the bottom line will be. Okay.
Okay. So just to be clear, so on the spreadsheet, the draft number 3 is the figures that I would like, if you support this new draft, to go forward to county for their approval for their tax levy ask. The reductions that we discussed.
So that's the blue heading for anybody who's following along, correct?
Blue heading, yes.
Yeah.
The column to the right of the blue heading is the amount that we would be taking from reserves. So we have decided to take some additional things from reserves that were previously in operational budget. And the column on the right side in orange explain the changes between draft 2 and draft 3. And the final column is the actual amount difference. So you can see that in I labeled the rows with R for revenue, the numbers, and then E for expenses with the numbers to make it quicker to find. So you'll see in R5 the tax levy request. In our third draft here, it is $1,304,800. $1,304,801. And that is a reduction in our levy act between the second draft and the third draft of $44,260.
And what's that in a percentage now?
So
we came in at 10.3% increase, I think. Is that right? Initially?
It was 9 point, sorry, just 1 second. So the county tax requisition was 7 point, the original one was 7.43% for the county levy. The overall increase to all revenues was 10.60%.
Okay, so what is it now?
So for the county tax requisition, the increase from last year, just for the county levy, would be 5.69% increase. So in year over year, so from 21 to 2022, it was just for the county tax requisition, it was a 9.44% increase. From 22 to 23, it was an 8.23% increase. And then with this proposed draft 3, for the tax requisition, it would be a 5.69% increase to the tax requisition from last year.
Jen?
So that's...
Andrea, are you reading? I've got my notes open. I'm kind of multi-screening. Are you reading that from the budget document itself? And if not, would you mind sending me and cease those numbers?
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'll send it to you afterwards. The document. So I don't have access to change these figures in Questica. It's Andrea Robinson that changes, so I had to work on a separate spreadsheet. So originally our draft 1 tax requisition to county council was $1,326,261. So this is the figures from your spreadsheet that you have. In draft 2, with our additional ask, it was $1,349,061, and then 3 is down to $1,304,801. So to summarize, if you just look at the columns in orange, it describes for you the changes. So you can see that we have diverted a number of costs from operations to reserves. If you look so on page 2, line E2, we are proposing to reduce the book budget by $8,000. The rationale for that is that we are funding from reserves books for Dorset, which patrons throughout the county will be able to place holds on. So it is an $8,000 reduction to our book budget, but we looked at that in comparison with Dorset collections being added. So we're not proposing any change to the wages line, as we just discussed in our earlier conversation. Page 3, line E14, we propose to eliminate the per diems for the board this year. We don't have any strategic planning sessions planned. We don't have to pay for any room bookings. At this point, we don't have anything forecasted or anything where we're providing meals to the board. So we propose eliminating that $3,000, funding the air filters through reserves in 2024. funding the iPad refresh and miscellaneous tech items that we need throughout the year from reserves instead of from operations. Removing a database that is quite expensive, Press Reader. That's the software that allows us, or the program that allows us to have access to newspapers and magazines digitally from around the world. So we won't renew that subscription. It renews in 2024 in the fall, so it'll still show for the next few months, but we won't renew it this year. We'll remove our request for $5,000 of ebooks that we had requested due to the increase in use. Some of these things we've already discussed, so I'll skip over them because they're from the previous drafts. Andrea Robinson identified that there was a savings in insurance of $1,210 in her draft 2 budget presentation. We talked about not for the Dorset branch hours, not pairing them with Stanhope as a kind of a shift where an employee travels between the 2 branch locations. So that would save us in mileage costs. We do need a little bit of money in that budget because we'll be back and forth a little bit to get things set up at the new branch, but removing that cost. We reduced the staff training budget by $1,500. And we talked about we usually do an automatic transfer of $6,000 into reserves for IT equipment. So this helps us save up when we need to make a big purchase, like replace a photocopier, for example. Because we have a healthy reserve amount right now, we could put this pause on for this year. So this spreadsheet doesn't include the amortization lines because they don't impact going in and out of the budget. When everything gets totaled up, it does reduce our levy ask between the draft 2 and draft 3 by $44,260.
Okay, so I have one question, Andrea, and Jen. I think I'm going to ask this question with some vague knowledge of Gary making a point at one time in our discussions about the budgets, and he is of the opinion that any reductions we make should be able to last 3 years, I think was his number. So if we take something out of the budget, it's got to be able to stay out for 3 years for him to be comfortable with that going forward. And I think we should be cognizant of that as we talk about stuff that we're going to be not doing or funding from reserve. Jen, go ahead.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a 3-year assumption, and I completely understand the rationale behind that.
Yeah.
There are some temporary savings in what the subcommittee figured out, such as, the book purchases or the digital library purchases, and that will be made known that this is it's something that we've been able to carve out for now, but not to expect that being the case going ahead, so that they're fully aware and they're not surprised next year.
Great. That's my point. And I think if you can make that on our behalf, that's wonderful. Because I agree where Gary's coming from, been there, done that. And I know that it's easy to slash down and come back next year and say, well, we want all that back plus some more. And that's his whole point. Paul, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I see in the yellow column where the amount from reserves, the grand total there is $83,550. And there's a number of things that are being applied from reserves for ongoing operational kind of things, like the air filters for the standalone, air handling that were purchased this summer. Just for me, it's a concern that goes back to what Cease was saying earlier about, we made this decision, but you kind of have to backtrack in a couple of years. So I'm just raising it. I don't think I have an answer, but I guess we all have to be really conscious and cognizant of what we're doing. And the other thing, I just did a quick scratch on the monies that are going into Dorset. primarily from reserves. It's, I think it totals to $103,000 between the collection purchase, the IT stuff, some incidentals, and then the $63,000. So, I mean, that's a big chunk of money. Not that we shouldn't be going ahead with it, but again, that's, I think it's all coming out from reserves, and some of that's overlapped, but that's a lot of money from reserves. It just can't keep happening every year.
Yeah, good point, Paul. And I don't think the intent is it would happen every year. The largest portion of that withdrawal is for of reserves is for Dorset, obviously.
Yeah.
I think the important thing here is to be sensitive to what you're saying, because it's a good point, but equally to be sensitive to the size of our reserve relative to our organization. We have a very large reserve. I don't know what the number is now, Andrea, but last time I think I heard it was in a couple of $100,000 range, give or take.
Yeah, so in Andrea Robinson's presentation of draft 2, our library reserve is $222,762. Committed, so not including the things that we're discussing today, but including the Dorset, the stuff in IT commitments. We have committed $75,917.84. So non-committed, again, not including the things that I'm talking about adding today, is $146,844.
Okay, so Paul, that's where I was coming from. The reserve grab this year, and I don't mean that in a negative way, is large when you look at it, but Dorset doesn't come along every year and take that kind of money. We still have a very healthy reserve for an organization our size, which I think is something that the county council was aware of when they were starting some of these discussions relative to what we were asking. And so I just wanted to put that on the table as a kind of a corollary to well, you know, we're bleeding down our reserves. There's still a fair amount left over. Okay. Any other discussion on this? Go ahead, Jen.
A question for Andrea, just jumping back a subject actually, and putting together my argument for the 6th. When you do your staffing review, your systems review, is that also a time that you might review, hours of operation and how we make sure that we get more cottagers involved in the library? Or is that something that, because we talked about that before, and I wonder if that would be then, or if that's something that would come after that. One of the issues that has been raised at council, and it's a fair point, is how many people we expect to see coming through those doors. And in Dorset, will it be more than the numbers that were coming through the doors before, that led in great part to it being closed in the first place? So is there a commensurate shift around that we might also see in terms of the numbers of patrons' return on investment because of this systems shift?
I think we would probably look at that separately. So hours of operation, changing those would be something that the board would be involved with. So we will at a future meeting need to decide, you will need to decide about hours of operation for the new Dorset branch. So that's something certainly I can do legwork on, but that's would be a separate part of the process.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Cease.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm trying to find out too is like, for instance, the main purpose of why we're here is because county council did not like the number that we came up with. That's really what the whole purpose of this is. It's not necessarily to justify and look at a whole bunch of other things that we know we're going to be doing or are already agreed to do, and then we're going to start discussing how that's going to happen. We'll do that at a different board meeting and go and get into that. So back to R5, I believe, is the ask that we're having of the county for the amount of monies that we have.
Yeah.
Did I hear you say that we're going to be, that number is 5.8% higher than it was the last ask? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's from the previous year. So, so in 2023, the increase from our 2022 budget to our 2023 budget was 8.23%. So the draft 3 number 1,304,801 is 5.69% higher than our budget for 2023.
The problem that we got is when we're sitting down at county council, we're getting a lot of percentages. We got 10 point this and whatever point that. So now all of a sudden they get confused as to what is the number percentage that you're asking for. So the number that we're asking for is 5.8. Now, having said that, it's too low. Because they were looking for us to bring it from 10 down. It never was 10 in the first place. It was 8. So now we've taken out some stuff in my mind that probably will have value to the people that we represent, not big dollars, like for instance, the concept of needing more ebooks. If we were to add that back in, what's it going to do to the 5.6? Move it up to 10? I don't think so. But it's going to make the service of the library much better. So if it moves it from 5.6 to 5.8, who cares? That is what the library board is paid to do. The county's argument was that based on what they thought, which was a 10% increase, which obviously that was wrong, it's going to be more along the lines. If we were to look at the things that we've cut out of this budget, that really the average Haliburton Countyan, for the lack of a better term, can get great benefit from, and it still keeps us under a 6 to 6.2%, then we should be putting that stuff back for our people. Now I don't care if I'm a county councillor anymore. I'm a board member looking at the people that I serve, which is now the people of Haliburton County. So if there's a few things here that are not significantly large, that would add to the overall, and not take us over a threshold of, say, even 6%, which would be a significant reduction, that county council will, because if I'm hearing correctly, as a county councillor, it's none of my business how we spend the money here. My number is it within the confines and acceptability? And the answer that I got when I was sitting at county council was, it has to be less than 7.8% because that's what the levy is. So if we bring that number down, but without taking it to the 5.6, because I think we could be cutting off our nose to spite our face. And we're cutting out things that in the future, we're going to wish we hadn't done, because now if ebooks goes up again next year, now what?
Yeah, so cease on that.
You know, that's the part that I'm having confusion with.
Yeah, and that's a good point, but it's dependent on the percentage that, and I heard that 10.3 number when Andrea and I were at county council last time together. And I don't know where that came from. If Andrea is now telling us the actual number was 8 point something or 7 point something, where did the 10.3 come from to start?
So the spreadsheet that comes from Questica software shows the 2022, 2023, 2024 budget and actuals. And so it's for the revenues total. So that includes the county levy, but it also includes money that we get from the province and from the federal government and from photocopying and from various other people's donations and that type of thing. So it's from our total revenue. So that overall, including all of that, is 10.60%. So that also would include like the amount that is coming out of revenues for Dorset, for example. So if we just look at the levy, just the tax requisition total, our original ask, let me just see if it was budget 2 or 3. In draft 1, our tax requisition percentage increase was 7.43% for just that part of it.
So if what we're basically saying is that we're laying all the cards on the table. That's how we're doing it, and that's how what you get paid to do is just to manage this whole thing. So the ask to the county is one line. That is the only line that the county should have any influence on whatsoever, because that's the check they write. The rest of it is none of their bloody business. And I sit on that council.
Yeah.
So
and
at the end of the day, how Andrea runs this thing is up to us to decide whether it's acceptable. And
Yeah, it is up to us to decide whether it's acceptable within the amount of money given to us by the county.
No, because the total amount, Dave, is there.
No, no, what I'm saying, Cease, is that say county council gives us $1.3 million. How we spend that $1.3 million is entirely up to us. If they give us $1.2 million, same argument. Okay, you give us $100,000 less, we have to figure out how to do it. That's the way the system works. I was getting confused on the number of 10.3 or 5 or 6, whatever it was, floating around, because I couldn't find it in all the numbers I was looking at. Yeah. So I think going in, your point is well taken, Cease, is that number, that 10.3 that they seem to be arguing about has to be understood that it's really not that number to start with. It's much less than that, a couple of points less than that, and then we're willing to take it down even lower than the expected level of increase that the county's willing to live with.
But my argument is that number, Dave, it's not the ask that we're asking for. Our ask is merely a piece of the budget. And that piece of the budget, based on Andrea's numbers now, is going up around 5 and change.
Right.
Which to me is a little low based on some of the stuff that we've cut out.
Yeah, yeah.
The reason we cut it out was because we were dealing with this 10% as opposed to the 5%. So I think we should look at some of the critical things, not everything, because a lot of work went into reducing that number.
Yeah, yeah.
You should recognize that. But there are some key things here, like ebooks. I know damn well that the demand on ebooks is getting to be ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so we're going to cut that money out this year, which means that money is no longer in the budget. So next year, if we have to add money, it's going to add on top of the money that we should have had in this year.
Yeah.
And so now I'm beginning to get a little bit the other way. We're letting.
I hear you.
Council decide how much money we spend.
No, I agree. Let Jen jump in here for a sec. Go ahead.
As you were speaking, Cease, I opened up my Libby app on my phone and I looked at my holds. And I've got one hold. It's an Atwood, Oryx and Crake. I still don't know how to pronounce Oryx. I'm sure I'll find out when I start listening to the book. It's spelled Oryx. The hold is for several months. As of this minute, I am 157th in the line. I started at 162. There's one copy in use, and there are 166 people waiting in Haliburton County right now, just in Haliburton County.
I think that's wrong.
That might not be just in Haliburton County.
Yeah.
That might be a consortium. It might be part of the.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Still.
There's people waiting for it. There's a lot of people waiting for it.
A lot of people, there's a demand for these things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that gets very directly to the point that Cease is making.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul?
First, I have to apologize to Cease because I kind of smirked or something when he said we're asking for too little. So my apologies. And I agree with you 100%. So if there's some way we could boost the digital thing and the collections number and maybe the air filters, throw those things back in our budget here, but the bottom line changes from 1,304 to 1,325 or something. And we're being diligent with our side of it, but also it satisfies the need on the other side at the other table, and we can say, take it ahead on that.
Okay, so let me ask Andrea this question, because I think it's something that we may want to explore for a minute. Andrea, if we were to say to you, you've got $10,000 to add back in the budget, where would you go?
I would probably put it on the collections, back on the collection, so ebooks and books.
Okay. And so that's kind of core to our business, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? We are a library, and among many other things, one of the primary thing we do is loan books and other things for reading. So would you entertain an amendment to, I haven't called the motion yet, but amendment to the motion that would put ebooks back in, and fourth, that's $6,000, and $4,000 for our book collection back in, that's $10,000. And that would reduce our cut from 44,000 to 34,000, give or take. Would you entertain that as a board? Or do you want to stay where we are?
That gives us
Jen?
a percent.
Given the work that has been proposed in restructuring, in doing a re-systems review,
Yeah.
I would certainly agree to that. If we weren't also committing to that, I think that would be a hard ask, but we are committing to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think just in the back of my head, 10 grand is going to be about 1% maybe, or something like that. I may be wrong, 1.2 or 3, maybe somewhere in there. I don't know. I've got my calculator here in front of me, but how is the board on that particular issue? Let's change the reduction from 44, whatever it is, to 34, whatever that is, by adding 10,000 back in for ebooks and the paper books. Is everybody in favor of that? Anybody opposed to it? Okay.
When we make the presentation, or when you make the presentation to county council, stress the amount of change to the levy, not to the overall budget, because that's all 2 or 3 of the councilors are interested in.
Yeah.
Because we've gone through, and at the end of the day, you have found alternate ways of paying for things, which doesn't affect the county, and there's none of their bloody business.
Yeah, and Andrea, I would suggest that you have a chat with Andy or Andrea Robinson about this, and say that, tell her about this 10.3 number that seemed to have been floating around at the last council meeting. And I for one was scratching my head. I don't know where that came from, but tell her that in our calculations, our increase between 2023 and 2024 is not 10.3%. It is whatever that percent is. And make sure that in that you've added the 10 grand back in, so that they know exactly what that percentage is if they want to calculate it out. Because Cisa's right. It's all how much of the levy that we're asking for. It's nothing more than that when you get right down to it.
All it is.
And if we're asking for 7.2% or 3% of the levy, and the Works Department is asking for 8.3, so what? Who cares? It's what we need out of the levy to make it work. Any other comments on this? I'm going to take it that we're in favor. The motion will be as amended, and the amendment will be the $10,000 we've just spoken about. So if we're all in favor of that.
So, sorry, just to confirm, so 5,000 in ebooks, 5,000 in print books.
If that's the way you're
whatever you deem appropriate, Andrea. You're the detail person, not us. Okay, so the motion will be it resolved that the Haliburton County Public Library Board accept the proposed revised 2024 library budget as amended.
Correct.
I need a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Paul, seconded by Jackie. Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Okay, great discussion, folks. Thank you very much. Jen and Cease, thank you very much for being here today, and I'm glad you are, because you will bring the perspective of the discussion to the county council, which it's very important, the role you play when you go back and you put your counselor hat on as opposed to a library hat, and we really do appreciate that very much. Andrea, on March 6th, when you're having that meeting, I'm going to be about 80 feet underwater. So you're on your own, but I'll circle back and have a chat with you, okay?
Sounds good, Dave.
Okay. All right. I have a motion to adjourn, I think is probably the next one. I don't assume there's a municipal roundtable required, and the next meeting date is March 14th. I noticed that it's via Zoom. Is that on purpose?
It's any way you can join. I think it's that might just be the automatic thing that pops up, Melanie.
That's what I thought. So it'd be a combination of Zoom or in person.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, who's going to move that motion to adjourn? Jen, thank you very much. Have a great weekend, folks, and I'll see you when I get back.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
Andrea, good luck on the 6th. And if you need me, Andrea,